Hey, I'm Mike Brennan, and we're back again, and we have a special ITC Energy Report that we've been doing on a monthly basis. And each month we bring in different folks from the company. And I have Nora Bulgarian, and she is the Senior Area Manager for ITC. And before we went live, I asked her to kind of explain that to me because I wasn't sure what that meant. And so I'll let you go ahead and explain that. What are your duties, Nora?
Sure, absolutely. Well, good afternoon, Mike and Matt, and I'm glad to be here. Before I talk about the duties, just a quick recap of ITC so everyone is aware of what we do. We're the nation's largest independent electric transmission company. And so when you think about transmission, we are the middle part of the electric grid. We don't generate the power, we don't distribute it, but we move it along long distances on the high voltage power lines. And, you know, a lot of people will see those around highways and also through rural areas, the really big, tall structures. And so, you know, we are transmission centered. That is what we do. And as a senior area manager, I cover the west side of Michigan, about 26 counties. And my job is to interface with our local elected officials, our municipal leaders, city managers, township supervisors, economic development professionals, you know, educating them on our infrastructure, our projects, you know, what's coming down the pike. There's certainly a lot of approvals that go along with our projects, and everybody needs to be on board. So I lead that effort as that liaison with the west side of Michigan.
Yeah, I know the last couple of years have been challenging for all of us, but actually there's a little bit of good news that you wanted to talk about that I see here in my notes. Why don't you go ahead and take it from there? For instance, in 2021, go ahead, talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, I'll say through this whole pandemic, we've been able to, you know, continue with our projects. So I want to just give a shout out to everybody for kind of making it through these last couple of years. It's certainly had its challenges, but it's been great. But back in 2021, if you're referring to the Transmission Infrastructure Planning Act, is that the TIPA?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we were successful with that legislation. We were, I want to say we were the 5th state to enact or be part of such a legislation. And what it does, it allows incumbent transmission providers to be the first ones to be able to bid on projects, work together. And it really helps with collaboration, making sure that we're not slowing things down, you know, and you know, we're working to keep the costs down. And really, you know, when you see all these different renewables coming online, and we'll be talking about that as we talk along here, we really need to be able to quickly respond to infrastructure development. So this was a great benefit for the state of Michigan, and we were glad the governor signed it.
Yeah, and also I noticed in the notes here that I was sent that things have been going really well in the sense of 396 new franchise businesses. Expect to add another 139 in 2022, according to the Franchise Association. And actually, Michigan's economy has improved the most in the history of the pandemic over the last 2 years. So these are all good factors, right?
Absolutely. You know, like I was saying, with these renewable, and I believe Simon had spoken to this as well, the amount of renewable projects coming on, especially solar, they want to connect to the grid, and you know, we have to be able to have those transmission products and in place in order to do that. And you're going to see that businesses are really demanding that, that connection to renewable and stepping away from fossil fuels, which is why you're seeing Consumers Energy and DTE make the kind of steps that they're making in that direction.
Matthew?
Yeah, I was just wondering, where you see this going in terms of renewables. Will you continue to be building out as more wind farms are added, as more solar farms are added?
Absolutely. And that is all about the planning aspect and being able to collaborate, which goes back to that TIPA legislation as well, because we want to be really thoughtful about where infrastructure goes in. Certainly, we want to look at our existing lines and be able to tap into what's already there, because we don't need to be putting in as a lot of new right of way if possible. So we have to really collaborate on where the best ways to lay that infrastructure in.
All right, let's talk a little bit more. I mean, Simon brought it up that last week, for instance, or last month, I should say, when he was on, we were quizzing him about, everything wants to go electric. You got electric vehicles, and just everybody has a device or multiple devices that use a lot of electricity. And he was saying that that's not exactly like you could just flip a switch. It's a 7 to 10 year process to get all that stuff sorted out. Why don't you go into you're the one that's out there, I assume, that dealing with the state and local officials. And is everybody on board with that? I mean, do you get any pushback at all?
Oh, definitely there's pushback, and we understand in the sense of, where you locate different lines or substations, we want to be very cognizant of people's homes and businesses, and so when you look at the site, the whole planning starts again. You mentioned the 7 to 10 year planning process. It starts, with seeing where the demand is located, and then going from there to see, making sure that that we're not going to lose reliability in a certain area. So that's all being studied by our engineers ahead of time. And so then once those get approved, then our real estate folks step in. And so then you have to go in and look at a particular area and be able to cite, we want to look at our current line structure and be as close to that as possible to tie into that. And then you have to be able to find land that's available. And then from there, once you it can be a bit of a needle in a haystack situation. From there, you have to go to the local community, look at what the ordinance are in that area, and then work with those local townships and cities to talk about, getting it through that approval process, which then takes public hearings. So then you have to answer those questions from those local councils, and then the public certainly has a say, or they have their comments, and we have to be able to answer those questions. And so it is getting a little tougher, because as there isn't more of a demand for these renewables and building out more infrastructure, we have to find these places. But on the other hand, you do get pushback from communities where they don't necessarily want a substation in their backyard or the right of way created. And that's where we have to create that education with our leaders, with our economic development professionals, to help educate the public about the importance of citing these infrastructure.
Matt?
Looking at the headlines today, I can't help but ask the question about cybersecurity. We keep hearing about that there may be attempts to damage or take down the power grid. If you could just talk a little bit about the steps ITC is taking to make the grid secure.
Well, I will say that I'm not, I will do my best to answer that question because I'm not in the cybersecurity department.
Understood.
Itself,
Yeah, I know.
That's not her area, right?
Yeah,
Right,
it's not my area, but I know that internally they are definitely it's always a conversation. We are always talking about what are the latest cybersecurity efforts that we can take to make sure that we're keeping things secure. So know that that's a constant conversation, and we're tapped into our the government officials, and that kind of communication is always flowing back and forth. Certainly we definitely understand, especially with the latest concerns with Ukraine and Russia, and our CEO is right up front saying that we are for all of us to be vigilant, and I think that shows a lot of leadership for that we take this very seriously. And so again, I can't kind of be specific about cybersecurity, but I can tell you how serious it is a discussion that we have internally.
All right, let's sort of wrap this up then, talking about how does electric transmission and infrastructure play a role in attracting businesses to Michigan? I mean, that's got to be a key thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you think about resiliency and knowing that the grid or you won't have an outage, that's incredibly important to a business attraction. It costs, if we have an outage, it can cost businesses millions of dollars a day. And so, we have to be able to demonstrate and show that we have the infrastructure in place. And we work directly with the MEDC. So when they have these business attraction projects coming online, and we have the 72-hour turnaround to show, what is our capacity now? And if the capacity isn't there, how long is it going to take us to get to that capacity? We have to be able to quickly demonstrate that. And certainly energy is a top priority for business attraction. And we are part of that team of partners with the MEDC to hopefully get these projects across the finish line.
And certainly, just so one more time clarification, you guys don't generate the energy. That would be DTE and consumers and other folks, but you transport it over long distances. In fact, let's bring that up. We were talking about that. How many transmission miles do you have?
So in the state of Michigan, we have 8,700 miles. But then we are in 7 other states, and ultimately we have approximately 16,000 miles of transmission, which I think is good, when you think about the regional effects for that, because certainly lines cross state lines, right? So, and there's definitely a regional connection with transmission. So it's important as the whole country looks at how things are built out. And how we're working together across state lines, that plays into economic development for sure.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time in this segment. So, Matthew, why don't you take us out?
All right. Well, we want to thank our guest here today from ITC, Nora Balgoyan.